What if I told you that one of history's greatest minds discovered a truth so devastating about human nature that he warned it should never be spoken aloud? Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist who unlocked the mysteries of the unconscious mind, stumbled upon a secret that would change how you see every person you meet forever. This isn't just another self-help revelation. This is something that Jung himself called the shadow truth of humanity, a psychological reality so raw, so unforgiving that once you understand it, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. But here's what Jung discovered through decades of analyzing the human psyche. The very people who claim to love you, support you, and stand by you are the same ones who will forget your kindness in mere days, yet remember your mistakes for decades. Are you ready to peer behind the mask that every human being wears? Because what you're about to learn cannot be unlearned. According to Carl Jung's extensive research into human behavior, there exists what he termed the gratitude paradox, a psychological phenomenon that reveals the darkest truth about how our minds actually work. Picture this scenario that Jung documented time and again in his clinical practice. You spend months helping a friend through their darkest period. You sacrifice your time, your energy, your resources. You become their emotional anchor when they're drowning in despair. Yet, 3 weeks after their crisis passes, it's as if your kindness never happened. Think about your own life for a moment. Can you remember every act of kindness someone showed you last month, last year? Be honest. The answer will disturb you. Carl Jung discovered that the human brain is wired with what he called benefit amnesia, a psychological defense mechanism that causes us to forget positive experiences much faster than negative ones. But why would our minds work against gratitude? Jung's research revealed something chilling. Remembering kindness creates psychological debt, and the human ego despises feeling indebted. So, our unconscious mind performs a magic trick. It simply forgets the elaborate birthday surprise you planned forgotten within weeks. The late-night calls when they needed support vanished from their emotional memory. But here's where it gets worse. While your acts of generosity fade from their memory like morning mist, that one time you snapped at them during stress, that lives on in crystal clearer detail, growing more vivid with each retelling. Carl Jung said, "The human mind is like a museum of grievances and a cemetery of kindnesses." This isn't pessimism. This is documented psychological reality. But Jung's most disturbing discovery was still to come. Through his analysis of thousands of patients, he uncovered what he privately called the universal deception, the fact that every single person, no matter how genuine they appear, operates with hidden agendas. That sweet elderly neighbor who always smiles and waves, she's calculating whether you're the type to help with her groceries or call the police if she's too loud. Your closest friend who always seems so supportive. They're unconsciously measuring whether your success threatens their self-image. This isn't conscious manipulation. It's far more insidious than that. According to Carl Jung, what he termed the shadow self means that beneath every human interaction lies a web of unconscious motivations, survival calculations, and ego protection mechanisms that the person themselves doesn't even realize exist. Jung discovered that even in our most genuine moments of connection, our unconscious minds are running background programs. How does this benefit me? What can I gain from this relationship? How do I maintain my position in this dynamic? The mother who seems endlessly giving, she's unconsciously programming you for future loyalty and care in her old age. The friend who remembers every detail about your life, they're building emotional leverage for when they need your support. And here's the part that will haunt you. You do this too. Right now, as you listen to these words, your unconscious mind is calculating how this knowledge can benefit you, how it might give you an advantage in your relationships. Carl Jung called this the inescapable shadow dance. We're all unconsciously using each other, while simultaneously believing we're being genuine. But Jung's research into human nature revealed an even more devastating truth about the people we trust most. He documented pattern after pattern of what he termed conditional loyalty, the way people's feelings toward us shift like weather patterns based on their current circumstances. That partner who swore they'd love you forever. Jung's case studies show that their devotion has an expiration date tied directly to how well you serve their current needs. The friends who feel like family, they're unconsciously evaluating whether your presence enhances or diminishes their social status. According to Carl Jung's decades of observation, human connections aren't the stable bonds we pretend they are. They're temporary arrangements that persist only as long as all parties find them beneficial. Jung discovered that every relationship contains what he called invisible scorecards, unconscious tallies of give and take, benefit, and cost that determine whether the connection continues or fades. When your circumstances change, when you lose your job, face illness, or simply become less useful, watch how quickly the phone stops ringing. Jung documented this phenomenon thousands of times. The friends who disappear when you can no longer provide entertainment, networking opportunities, or emotional validation. The colleague who seemed like a true friend until you got promoted above them. Carl Jung would say their friendship was never about you. It was about maintaining their comfort zone, the romantic partner who was devoted until a better option appeared. Jung understood that for most people, love is simply the emotion they feel when someone serves their current needs perfectly. This isn't cynicism. It's what Jung called the archaeological truth of human behavior. Dig beneath the surface of any relationship, and you'll find the buried motivations that actually drive it. Perhaps Jung's most heartbreaking discovery was what he termed the loyalty mirage. The crushing realization that true unconditional loyalty is not just rare, but may be psychologically impossible for most humans. Carl Jung developed what he privately called the loyalty test through his observations. How many people in your life would still stand by you if you lost everything? If your wealth disappeared, your status crumbled, your health failed, and you could offer nothing in return for their presence? Jung's research suggested that for most people the answer is zero, not because people are evil, but because loyalty requires a level of psychological development that few achieve. According to Jung's analysis of human psychology, most of what we call loyalty is actually beneficial attachment. People remain loyal as long as the relationship serves their emotional, social, or practical needs. But strip away those benefits and loyalty evaporates like steam. Carl Jung said, "We mistake temporary alignments for permanent bonds and then feel betrayed when people reveal their true nature." The harsh truth is that most people aren't abandoning you when circumstances change. They're simply returning to their natural state of self-preservation. Think about your workplace relationships, the colleagues who seem like genuine friends. Jung would point out that you've never seen them during a layoff when your friendship might cost them opportunities, the boss who treats you like family. You've never experienced what happens when you're no longer useful to their goals. True loyalty, Jung discovered, requires the ability to act against self-interest out of principle, a psychological capacity that most humans simply don't possess. But Carl Jung's most disturbing insight was his recognition that this entire system operates in darkness. Most people are completely unconscious of their hidden agendas, their conditional loyalty, and their selective memory about kindness. The person who forgets your generosity and remembers your mistakes isn't consciously choosing to be unfair. According to Jung's understanding of the unconscious mind, they literally cannot see their own patterns. Their shadow self, the part of their psyche they refuse to acknowledge, is running the show while their conscious mind tells a different story. This is why confronting people about these behaviors is futile. You're trying to make them conscious of patterns that their entire psychological structure is designed to keep hidden. Carl Jung discovered that humans possess what he called the nobility narrative, an unconscious story we tell ourselves about our own goodness while engaging in the exact behaviors we condemn in others. The friend who abandons you during crisis tells themselves they're protecting their energy. The colleague who sabotages you for promotion believes they're being strategic. The family member who only calls when they need something genuinely feels they're reaching out to reconnect. And here's the part that will shake you to your core. Jung realized that recognizing these patterns in others forces us to see them in ourselves. That uncomfortable feeling rising in your chest right now. That's the recognition that you've done these very things. According to Carl Jung, true psychological maturity begins when we stop pretending we're exempt from these universal human patterns. Jung's analysis revealed why these patterns exist in the first place. What we call character flaws are actually evolutionary survival mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive in a hostile world. Carl Jung understood that forgetting kindness serves an evolutionary purpose. It prevents us from being exploited by those who might use our gratitude against us. Remembering threats and slights keeps us vigilant against future dangers. Having hidden agendas ensures we're always positioning ourselves for survival advantage. Even conditional loyalty makes evolutionary sense. In a world of limited resources, loyalty must be strategic, not emotional. The problem, Jung realized, is that we're running ancient software in a modern world. We still possess the psychological patterns of tribes fighting for survival, but we're pretending to live in a civilization of unconditional love and pure friendship. This disconnect between our programmed nature and our cultural expectations creates what Jung called the authenticity crisis. We can't be genuinely good, but we can't admit we're naturally calculating. So, what was Carl Jung's ultimate secret? The truth he said should be taken to the grave. After decades of studying human nature, Jung concluded that authentic human connection, the kind we all crave, is possible only when we fully accept the shadow truth about ourselves and others. We must love people not despite their calculating nature, but because of their honest humanity. The secret Jung discovered is this: the path to genuine relationships isn't through pretending people are better than they are, but through accepting them as they actually are, unconsciously self-interested, conditionally loyal, and psychologically programmed for survival first. Carl Jung found that when we stop expecting people to be selflessly devoted, we can finally appreciate the moments when they choose to be generous despite their nature. When we understand that loyalty is rare and conditional, we can treasure it when we find it authentic. This doesn't make us cynical, it makes us realistic, and reality, Jung discovered, is the only foundation upon which genuine love can be built. This knowledge changes everything. You'll stop being devastated when people forget your kindness, because you'll understand the psychological mechanism at work. You'll recognize hidden agendas without taking them personally, because you'll see them as universal human programming. You'll prepare for conditional loyalty without becoming bitter, because you'll understand it's simply how most humans operate. Carl Jung lived the final decades of his life with this shadow knowledge, and it transformed how he approached every human relationship. He still loved deeply, still gave generously, still hoped for loyalty, but he did so with eyes wide open. According to Jung's private writings, once you understand these patterns, you gain tremendous power. You give kindness without expecting lasting gratitude, making your generosity truly selfless. You recognize agendas without becoming manipulative yourself. You invest in relationships while preparing for their natural evolution. You seek loyalty while accepting its rarity as a gift, not a right. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about becoming genuinely wise. Jung found that people who understand these shadow truths become more compassionate, not less, because they stop holding others to impossible standards. Carl Jung discovered the most beautiful irony of human psychology. When we stop needing people to be perfect, we can finally love them as they are. When we expect nothing, we can appreciate everything. When we understand the shadow, we can finally see the light. So why did Jung suggest this knowledge should be taken to the grave? Because this understanding gives you tremendous power over others who still live in illusion. You can manipulate those who expect permanent gratitude for temporary kindness. You can exploit those who believe in unconditional loyalty. You can deceive those who assume good intentions. Carl Jung realized that this shadow knowledge could either liberate or corrupt depending on the consciousness of the person who possesses it. The question becomes, will you use this understanding to become more authentically human, or will you use it to become more strategically predatory? Jung's warning about taking this to the grave isn't about keeping the knowledge secret. It's about ensuring you're psychologically mature enough to handle the responsibility that comes with seeing through the masks everyone wears. Carl Jung spent his final years integrating this shadow knowledge into what he called individuated consciousness, the ability to see clearly while still loving deeply. According to Jung's framework for psychological development, knowing these truths about human nature is just the beginning. The real work is learning to operate with love and kindness while maintaining realistic expectations. This means 1. Giving without attachment to outcomes, 2. Loving without demands for permanence, 3. Trusting while preparing for disappointment, 4. Hoping while accepting reality. The true test of whether you've integrated Jung's secret isn't whether you become cynical. It's whether you can remain genuinely loving while seeing people exactly as they are. Can you offer kindness knowing it will be forgotten? Can you build relationships knowing they may be conditional? Can you be loyal knowing loyalty may not be returned? In the twilight of his extraordinary life, Carl Jung arrived at a revelation so profound, so fundamentally transformative, that he believed it should be whispered only in the most sacred of spaces. This wasn't a clinical discovery to be published in psychological journals or a theory to be debated in academic halls. This was something deeper, more personal, more dangerous to our carefully constructed illusions about ourselves and others. The secret Jung carried to his grave wasn't about the existence of the unconscious mind, though he pioneered that understanding. It wasn't about archetypes or the collective unconscious, though these concepts revolutionized how we think about human behavior. No, this final insight was simultaneously simpler and more revolutionary. Human beings are not good or bad. They are human. For most of human history, we've organized our understanding of people into neat, comfortable categories. The good ones and the bad ones, the heroes and the villains, the saints and the sinners. We've built entire civilizations on the assumption that some people are inherently virtuous while others are irredeemably flawed. Our religions, our legal systems, our social structures all depend on this fundamental categorization. But Jung, through decades of sitting with the deepest, darkest, most beautiful secrets of the human soul, discovered something that shattered these comfortable distinctions. He found that every person without exception carries within themselves the full spectrum of human possibility, the capacity for breathtaking generosity and devastating cruelty, the potential for profound wisdom and shocking foolishness, the ability to love with transcendent beauty and to wound with calculated precision. This wasn't a theoretical understanding for Jung. It emerged from thousands of hours listening to confessions that would make hardened criminals weep, and witnessing acts of grace from people society had written off as hopeless. He saw respected pillars of the community harbor thoughts that would horrify their closest friends, and he watched society's outcasts demonstrate compassion that would humble the most devoted saint. Jung's concept of the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, was not merely an academic framework. It was a lived recognition that every human being contains multitudes. The most generous person you know has moments of startling selfishness. The most honest individual you've encountered has lied when it served their purposes. The most loving parent has felt flashes of resentment toward their children. But here's where Jung's insight becomes truly revolutionary. This isn't a bug in human nature, it's a feature. The shadow isn't something to be eliminated or overcome. It's something to be acknowledged, integrated, and ultimately accepted as part of what makes us magnificently, tragically, completely human. The person who has never acknowledged their capacity for cruelty is infinitely more dangerous than the person who knows they could be cruel and chooses not to be. The individual who believes they are incapable of selfishness will act selfishly while convinced they are being noble. The one who thinks they are beyond deception will lie to themselves so completely that they lose touch with reality itself. Most of our suffering in relationships comes not from people's actions, but from the collision between who people actually are and who we need them to be. We fall in love with potential, we befriend projections, we trust fantasies, and then we feel betrayed when reality inevitably intrudes. Jung discovered that this pattern of expectation and disappointment is not just unfortunate. It's the fundamental barrier to authentic connection. When we love someone for who we think they should be, we are not loving them at all. We are loving our own projection, our own need, our own carefully constructed illusion. The wife who expects her husband to always be strong will be devastated when he shows vulnerability. The friend who needs their companion to be perpetually positive will feel abandoned when that person experiences depression. The parent who requires their child to be an extension of their own unfulfilled dreams will experience every act of independence as a personal rejection. But what if, and this was Jung's revolutionary proposition, we could love people not despite their contradictions, but because of their full humanity? What if we could connect with others not by demanding they meet our expectations, but by accepting them as the beautifully flawed, magnificently complex beings they actually are? Perhaps the most difficult part of Jung's insight to accept is the recognition that even our noblest impulses often serve hidden purposes. The person who gives generously may be buying approval. The individual who always helps others might be avoiding their own problems. The one who never asks for anything could be maintaining a position of moral superiority. This doesn't make generosity false or help meaningless. It makes them human. It acknowledges that we are complex beings whose motivations are rarely pure, whose actions serve multiple purposes simultaneously, and whose hearts contain mixtures of selflessness and self-interest that we ourselves don't fully understand. Jung found that people tortured themselves trying to determine whether their good deeds were truly altruistic or secretly selfish, as if the presence of self-interest invalidated the reality of their compassion. But this binary thinking misses the profound truth. We are capable of being simultaneously self-serving and genuinely caring. Our love can be real even when it also meets our needs. Our help can be meaningful even when it also makes us feel good about ourselves. The liberation Jung discovered comes not from finding perfect people to love, but from learning to love imperfect people perfectly. This kind of love doesn't require the other person to be anything other than what they are. It doesn't demand consistency, perfection, or the fulfillment of our deepest needs. It simply sees and accepts and cherishes the full, complicated, contradictory reality of another human being. This is perhaps the most challenging form of love because it requires us to give up our most cherished illusions. It means loving your partner even when you fully understand their capacity for selfishness. It means caring for your friend while acknowledging their ability to be thoughtless. It means accepting your family members knowing they will sometimes disappoint you, hurt you, and fail to meet your expectations. But Jung discovered that this kind of clear-eyed love is also the most durable. It cannot be destroyed by disappointment because it never depended on illusion. It cannot be shattered by betrayal because it was built on the recognition that betrayal is possible. It cannot be undermined by human failings because it was founded on the acceptance of human limitation. When we truly understand that people are human, not perfect, not consistent, not capable of meeting all our needs, we become free to give without the hidden expectation of return. Our generosity becomes a gift to ourselves as much as to others because it expresses our own capacity for love rather than our hope for reciprocation. The person who helps others because they accept that others might not help them in return discovers a different kind of satisfaction. The individual who loves without demanding love back experiences a different kind of fulfillment. The one who gives without keeping score finds a different kind of peace. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting abuse. It means giving from fullness rather than emptiness, from choice rather than compulsion, from acceptance rather than hope that our giving will change others into who we need them to be. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Jung's insight is how it transforms our capacity for genuine connection. When we stop relating to our projections of who people should be and start connecting with who they actually are, something remarkable happens. We meet them in reality rather than in our imagination. This means seeing your partner's fear behind their anger, your friend's insecurity behind their boastfulness, your parents' love behind their criticism. It means recognizing that the person who hurt you is probably acting from their own pain, that the one who disappointed you is likely struggling with their own limitations, that the individual who let you down was perhaps carrying burdens you knew nothing about. This kind of connection is messier than our fantasies, but infinitely more real. It's built on truth rather than hope, on acceptance rather than potential, on what is rather than what might be. And paradoxically, it's in this acceptance of people's limitations that we often witness their greatest capacity for transcendence. Jung believed this insight should be taken to the grave not because it was shameful, but because it was sacred. It's knowledge that changes everything: how we see others, how we understand ourselves, how we navigate the complex web of human relationships. Once you truly see that people are neither good nor bad but simply human, you cannot unknow it. You cannot unsee the beautiful complexity that exists within every person you encounter. This knowledge follows you into every conversation, every conflict, every moment of connection. It whispers its truth when you're angry at someone's selfishness, reminding you of your own capacity for self-interest. It speaks up when you're disappointed by another's weakness, pointing to your own vulnerabilities. It offers perspective when you're hurt by someone's thoughtlessness, helping you remember the times you've been thoughtless yourself. But Jung would tell you that this isn't a burden, it's liberation. Because now you can finally love people as they actually are instead of who you needed them to be. You can connect without the exhausting work of trying to change others. You can give without the hidden agenda of getting something in return. You can accept without the secret hope that your acceptance will transform them into someone different. According to one of history's greatest students of human nature, this kind of clear-eyed, illusion-free love is the closest thing to authentic connection that exists in this world. It's love that sees clearly and chooses to love anyway. It's connection that acknowledges limitation and connects despite it. It's acceptance that recognizes flaws and accepts because of them, not in spite of them. This is not the love of fairy tales or romantic comedies. It's not the connection promised by self-help books or inspirational speakers. It's something more difficult and more real. The love that emerges when we stop trying to find perfect people and start learning to love imperfect people with complete authenticity. The secret is yours now. What you do with it will reveal everything about who you truly are. Will you use it to become cynical, to expect the worst from people because you know their capacity for disappointment? Or will you use it to become more compassionate, recognizing in others the same beautiful, tragic humanity you carry within yourself? Will this knowledge make you more demanding, holding people to impossible standards of consistency? Or will it make you more accepting, understanding that inconsistency is not a moral failing, but a human characteristic? Will you use this insight to justify your own failings? Or will it inspire you to be more honest about your motivations and more intentional about your choices? The wisdom Jung discovered doesn't come with instructions. It comes with responsibility, the responsibility to handle the truth about human nature with the care it deserves, to love more deeply because you see more clearly, to forgive more readily because you understand more fully, to connect more authentically because you've given up the illusions that kept you separate. Remember, Jung said to take this to your grave, not because it's shameful, but because it's sacred. Handle it with the wisdom it deserves. Let it transform not just how you see others, but how you see yourself. Let it be the foundation not for judgment, but for the kind of love that changes the world, one authentic connection at a time. In the end, perhaps this is Jung's greatest gift: the recognition that our humanity, in all its contradiction, complexity, and imperfection, is not something to be overcome, but something to be embraced. For it is in this embrace of our full humanity that we find our greatest capacity for genuine love, authentic connection, and lasting peace.